long and lonely, echoing across the wooden platform and the dusty street beyond it. Folks had gathered out of habit more than welcome, boots scraping the boards, hats tilted low against the sun. A woman stepped down from the rail car clutching a small brown suitcase, her fingers tight as if the handle might slip away and take her courage with it. Her dress was plain blue, worn at the hem, and the dust of a long journey already clung to it. In her other hand was a folded letter, creased so many times it felt softer than cloth. She stood there a moment too long, breathing in a town she had never seen before, and trying to decide whether she truly belonged to it. Across the platform stood a cowboy holding a small boy on his hip. The man's shoulders were broad, his shirt faded from years under the sun, his hat pulled low but not hiding the lines at the corners of his eyes. The boy was light-haired, restless, his boots swinging, his gaze fixed on the woman as if she were something pulled straight from a storybook. Behind them, a few men lingered, pretending not to stare while doing exactly that. This was not a town that missed much, and a mail-order bride was news that traveled faster than the train itself. The woman took one hesitant step forward, then another. Her eyes moved over the buildings, the hitching posts, the faces watching her. She had crossed miles of open land for a promise written in careful ink, a promise of a home, of purpose, of safety. But now that she stood here, the promise felt thin. The suitcase felt heavy. The letter felt like a fragile thing that could tear with one wrong breath. The cowboy shifted his weight, steadying the boy with one arm. He did not rush forward. He did not smile wide or wave. He simply waited, as if waiting was something he had learned long ago. The boy leaned out, pointing openly now, his small hand stretched toward the woman, his face bright with certainty. "That's her," the boy said, loud enough for half the platform to hear. "That's the one from the letter." The men behind the cowboy chuckled softly. One tipped his hat, another spat dust aside. The woman flushed, heat rising to her cheeks, but she did not look away. She met the cowboy's eyes instead, searching them for something she could not yet name. What she found there was not hunger or pride, but a tired steadiness, the kind that comes from getting up every morning whether you want to or not. She walked closer, the boards creaking under her shoes. The train hissed behind her, steam curling like a ghost ready to depart. She stopped a few feet away, close enough to see the faint scar along the cowboy's jaw, close enough to notice the boy's grip tightening on his shirt. "I can go back," she said suddenly, the words tumbling out before fear could stop them. Her voice shook but did not break. "If this isn't right, if you changed your mind, you can send me back." The town seemed to hold its breath. Even the train quieted as if listening. The cowboy looked down at the boy in his arms, then back at the woman. He did not answer at once. Instead, he watched as the boy leaned forward again, eyes wide and hopeful, as if the world had already made its choice. The man cleared his throat. "My son already chose you," he said simply. The words landed heavy, not with force but with meaning. The woman blinked, caught off guard. She had expected conditions, questions, maybe even doubt. She had not expected this. The boy grinned, satisfied, as if a deal had just been sealed. She swallowed. "I don't know anything about ranching," she said. "I don't know your land or your ways. I might not be what you think." The cowboy nodded once. "I ain't looking for perfect. Just someone who stays." That word stayed with her, sinking deep. She had spent years moving from place to place, never staying long enough to leave a mark. The idea of staying felt both comforting and frightening. She looked down at her suitcase, then back up at the boy, who was now studying her dress with serious interest, as if memorizing her. "What's your name?" the boy asked. She told him, her voice softer now. He repeated it carefully, rolling it around his mouth, and smiled like he had known it all along. The cowboy shifted the boy down onto the platform. The child's boots hit the boards with a small thud, and without hesitation, he stepped closer to the woman, reaching for her free hand. She froze for a second, then slowly let her fingers uncurl. His hand was warm, trusting, small. Something in her chest tightened. Around them, the town exhaled. The moment passed, replaced by murmurs and movement. The train began to pull away, wheels grinding, carrying with it every easy escape she had left. She watched it go, feeling the weight of that choice settle on her shoulders. They walked down the platform together, the cowboy carrying her suitcase now, the boy swinging their joined hands between them. The street stretched ahead, dusty and bright, leading toward a life she could only imagine. She noticed how the cowboy greeted folks with a nod, how they watched her with curiosity, some with approval, others with quiet judgment. She felt every look but kept her chin up. The ranch lay beyond the edge of town, past fields and open sky. The ride out was quiet. The boy talked enough for all of them, pointing out hills and fences, telling her where the creek ran high in spring and where the stars looked brightest at night. The cowboy listened, offering a word here and there, his presence steady as the land itself. When they reached the house, it stood alone against the horizon, weathered but strong. The porch creaked under their steps. She could smell dust and wood and something warm cooking inside. The door opened to reveal a space that felt lived in but lonely, a place shaped by routine rather than joy. She set her suitcase down and stood there, unsure where to place herself. The cowboy gestured toward a chair. "You can rest," he said. "Long ride." She sat, hands folded, heart racing. The boy climbed up beside her, leaning his shoulder against her arm as if it were the most natural thing in the world. She did not pull away. As the afternoon faded into evening, she helped where she could, learning the rhythm of the place by watching and listening. Supper was simple. The boy laughed when she burned the bread a little. The cowboy smiled at that, just barely. Later, when the boy was asleep and the house grew quiet, she stood on the porch looking out at the darkening land. Crickets sang. The sky stretched wide above her. The cowboy joined her, leaning against the railing, giving her space. "I meant what I said," she told him, her voice low. "If this is too much, if you decide I don't fit, I won't make trouble." He looked out over the fields before answering. "This land's seen harder things than a woman learning her way. What matters is you mean to try." She nodded, tears pricking her eyes, though she did not let them fall. She thought of the letter, of the words that had carried her here, of the boy's hand in hers. Inside, the floor creaked softly. The boy stood in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He looked at them, then spoke with the quiet certainty of someone who believes in what he says. "She's staying," he said. "Right?" The woman's breath caught. The cowboy did not answer right away. He looked at the boy, then at her, and in that pause lay every question she still carried, every fear she had yet to face. The night pressed in around them, full of promise and doubt, and she waited to hear what would come next. The cowboy did not answer the boy right away. He rested his hand on the porch rail, fingers rough and still, as if he needed something solid to lean on. The boy waited, wide-eyed, already certain of the outcome. The woman felt her chest tighten again, the quiet stretching longer than she expected. At last the man spoke, his voice calm but weighted with thought. "She's here," he said. "That counts for something." The boy nodded, satisfied enough, and padded back inside without another word, trusting the answer he had been given. The woman watched him go, the sound of his steps fading down the hall. When the door closed, the night seemed to grow larger around them. "I didn't mean to put you on the spot," she said softly. "He shouldn't have to decide things like that." The cowboy turned toward her then. "He's had to decide more than a child should," he replied. "This land teaches you early." She nodded, understanding more than she could say. She thought of the years that had shaped her, the choices she had made just to keep going. The air smelled of dry grass and distant wood smoke. Somewhere far off, a coyote called, lonely and sharp. They stood there a while longer, neither rushing back inside. Finally he spoke again. "You'll have your own room. It ain't fancy, but it's yours. Tomorrow we'll see about getting you settled." "Thank you," she said. The words felt small compared to what she felt, but they were all she had. That night sleep came slow. The bed creaked when she turned, unfamiliar beneath her. Moonlight slipped through the window, painting pale lines across the floor. She listened to the house breathe, to the wind brushing the walls, to the quiet sounds of a place that was not yet hers but might become so. Each sound reminded her that she was far from where she had started, and closer than ever to something she did not fully understand. In the morning, the boy was already awake, sitting at the table swinging his legs, humming to himself. He greeted her like she had always been there, asking if she wanted coffee, if she knew how to feed chickens, if she liked horses. His questions came one after another, full of life and hope. She answered as best she could, laughing when she had to admit she did not know much at all. The cowboy watched from the doorway, quiet as ever. She felt his gaze now and then, not judging, but measuring in a way that made her want to stand straighter. When breakfast was done, he handed her a small list written in careful handwriting. "These are things we'll need from town," he said. "If you want to come along," she hesitated. The town had felt heavy with eyes before. Still, she nodded. "I should," she said, "if I'm going to be here." The ride into town was quieter than the day before. The boy rode ahead on a small horse, proud and careful. The road stretched long and open, the sun climbing higher with each step. As they approached the buildings, she felt that same tightness return. She smoothed her dress, wishing suddenly that she had brought something finer. People noticed them right away. Some smiled. Others whispered. She caught fragments of words: mail order, brave, foolish. She kept her eyes forward, reminding herself why she had come. At the general store, the owner greeted the cowboy warmly, then turned to her with open curiosity. "So this is her," the woman behind the counter said, not unkindly. "You must have traveled far." "Yes," she replied. "Far enough." The woman nodded as if that answered everything. As they moved through the store, gathering supplies, the boy stayed close to her side, as though guarding her. She realized then that whatever else this place held, it held him, and that mattered more than she had expected. Outside, as they loaded the wagon, a man approached, hat tilted low, smile sharp. "Didn't think you'd go through with it," he said to the cowboy. "Bringing a stranger into your home." The cowboy's expression did not change. "Didn't ask what you thought," the man chuckled, eyes flicking to her. "Hope she knows what she's getting into." She met his gaze, steady despite the flutter in her chest. "So do I," she said. The man's smile faded, replaced by something unreadable. He tipped his hat and walked away. The boy squeezed her hand, small and reassuring. The ride back felt longer. She thought about the man's words, about the looks she had seen. The land rolled on, wide and unforgiving, beautiful in its own way. She wondered how many people had tried to tame it and failed. That afternoon, she learned more about the ranch. She learned where tools were kept, how the well worked, which fences needed mending. She listened more than she spoke, watching how the cowboy moved through his days with quiet purpose. He did not waste words or steps. Everything had its place. As the sun dipped low, they sat on the porch again. The boy played in the dirt, building something only he could see. The cowboy broke the silence. "You wrote in your letter that you wanted a home," he said. "Why this place?" She took a breath. "Because it was offered honestly," she said. "Because it did not promise ease, just work and belonging." He nodded slowly. "Belonging takes time." "I know," she replied. "I'm willing to give it." The wind picked up, carrying dust across the yard. The boy looked up, face serious. "Some folks don't like new things," he said. "They think it changes what they know." She smiled at him. "Change can be scary." He considered that, then nodded. "But it can be good." The cowboy watched the two of them, something like relief passing through his eyes before he hid it again. Still, she sensed there was more he was not saying. A weight he carried alone. That night, as she washed up, she noticed a locked door at the end of the hall. She had not seen it before. The handle was worn, the wood scarred. She did not touch it, but the sight of it stirred her curiosity. Every house had its closed rooms, she supposed. Every life did too. Days passed, each one folding into the next. She settled into a rhythm, learning the work, earning small smiles and fewer stares in town. Yet the tension never fully eased. She felt it in the way conversations stopped when she entered, in the way the cowboy sometimes went quiet, lost in thought. One evening she found the boy sitting alone on the porch steps, staring out at the dark. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "My mama," he said simply. Her heart clenched. She sat beside him, close but not touching. "Do you want to tell me about her?" He nodded. "She used to sing, real soft. The house don't sound the same without her." She swallowed, choosing her words carefully. "I won't take her place," she said. "But I can help fill the quiet if you want." He looked at her, eyes bright. "I want that," he said. From the doorway, the cowboy listened, unseen. He felt the pull of the past and the uncertain shape of the future pressing in on him. He knew bringing her here had stirred things he had kept buried. Yet watching his son speak with such trust, he wondered if some doors were meant to open, no matter how hard you tried to keep them closed. The night deepened, stars bright overhead. The ranch stood silent, holding its breath. Somewhere inside the house, a secret waited, patient and unresolved, while the woman sat beside the boy, unaware that her arrival had already set something in motion that could not be undone. The days grew warmer, and with the warmth came work that never seemed to end. The woman learned the shape of each morning by the sound of boots on the floor and the smell of coffee drifting through the house. She learned how early the cowboy rose, often before the sun, and how quietly he moved so he would not wake the boy. She noticed how he paused at the window some mornings, staring out toward the land as if measuring it against something only he could see. She worked hard, harder than she had in other places, because here the work felt like proof. Proof that she belonged, that she was not just passing through. She mended clothes, helped with meals, learned to tend the garden patch behind the house. Her hands grew rougher, her muscles sore, but there was a quiet pride in it. Still, no matter how much she did, she could feel the unspoken questions hovering around her like dust in the air. In town, the looks had not stopped. Some folks warmed to her, offering advice, small kindnesses, stories of their own struggles. Others stayed distant, polite, but guarded. She heard whispers when she passed, words like bargain, desperation, stranger. She pretended not to notice, but each word lodged somewhere deep. One afternoon, while she was hanging laundry, the boy ran up to her, breathless. "Pa's upset," he said. Her heart jumped. "What happened?" "There was a man at the fence," the boy replied, talking loud. She followed him around the side of the house. The cowboy stood near the gate, facing a rider she recognized from town. The man's posture was stiff, his voice sharp even from a distance. She could not hear the words clearly, but she could feel the tension in the air, thick and uneasy. The cowboy's voice stayed low. He did not raise it, but there was an edge to it she had not heard before. At last, the rider spat into the dirt and turned away, riding off without another word. "What was that about?" she asked carefully. The cowboy hesitated, then shrugged. "Just folks minding business that ain't theirs." She wanted to ask more, but she sensed it would do no good. Instead, she nodded and turned back to the laundry, though her thoughts stayed with the image of that man riding away, anger written into every line of his back. That evening, she noticed the cowboy linger near the locked door at the end of the hall. He stood there longer than usual, hand resting on the frame, eyes distant. She pretended not to see, but the mystery pressed closer. She wondered what lay behind that door. Papers, memories, something he could not yet share. Later, as they sat at the table, the boy looked up from his plate. "Pa," he said, "some kids in town said she won't stay." The room went quiet. The woman felt her throat tighten, but she kept her gaze on her hands. The cowboy set his fork down. "What did you say?" he asked gently. "I said she would," the boy replied, "because she promised she wanted a home." The cowboy looked at the woman then, really looked at her as if seeing her choice reflected back at him through his son's certainty. "People say a lot of things," he said slowly. "Sometimes because they're scared of change." The boy nodded, satisfied again, and returned to his meal. But the woman could not eat. The words echoed in her mind long after the dishes were cleared. That night she dreamed of trains and open roads, of letters burning away in her hands. She woke with a start, heart racing, unsure where she was for a moment. The house settled around her, familiar now, but the fear lingered. What if the town was right? What if she could not stay? The next day brought new tension. A storm rolled in unexpectedly, dark clouds gathering fast. The cowboy worked late, bringing animals in, securing what he could. She helped where she was told, the wind tugging at her dress, rain stinging her face. In the chaos, she saw another side of him, focused, fierce, protective of everything under his care. When the storm passed, leaving the land slick and shining, they stood together in the yard, catching their breath. Mud streaked his boots, rain darkened his hair beneath the hat. "You did good," he said. The praise surprised her more than it should have. "I just did what needed doing. That's more than most," he replied. That night, The boy insisted she sit beside him while he tried to sleep. The thunder scares me, he admitted. She sat, humming softly, unsure of the tune but letting it come naturally. His breathing slowed, his small hand gripping her sleeve until sleep took him. As she stood to leave, she saw the cowboy in the doorway, watching with an expression she could not read. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly. "I wanted to," she replied. He nodded, as if accepting that meant something more than the act itself. Days later, a letter arrived. The cowboy handed it to her without comment. The handwriting was unfamiliar. Her hands trembled as she opened it. It was from a woman back east, someone who had helped arrange the match. The words were polite but pointed, asking if the agreement was holding, if she was satisfied, reminding her that other arrangements could still be made if needed. She folded the letter slowly, feeling the weight of choice settle again. The idea that she could still leave, that the path back was not entirely closed, filled her with a strange mix of relief and dread. The cowboy noticed her expression. "Bad news?" "No," she said, then hesitated. "Just a reminder of where I came from," he studied her. "You ain't bound by ink on paper," he said. "You're here because you chose to be. Did you?" she asked before she could stop herself. The question hung between them. He looked away, jaw tightening. "I chose what I thought was best for my son," he said at last. She nodded, hurt flickering through her but tempered by understanding. This had never been just about her. In town, rumors began to grow sharper. Someone had seen the letter delivered. Someone else claimed she was already planning to leave. She heard it in half-finished sentences, in looks that lingered too long. She carried it all quietly, not wanting to add to the cowboy's burden. One evening, she found the locked door open. Just a crack, she froze, heart pounding. She knew she should turn away. Instead, she pushed it gently, peering inside. The room was small, filled with boxes and shelves. Photographs lined one wall. A woman's face smiled back at her from one of them, eyes kind, familiar in a way that made her chest ache. The boy stood beside that woman, younger, laughing. The cowboy stood just behind them, arm protective. She stepped back, guilt flooding her. She had not meant to intrude. She closed the door softly, but not before the cowboy saw her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, he said, "That was his mother." "I know," she whispered. "I'm sorry." "I shouldn't have looked." He shook his head. "It ain't locked to keep her out?" "It's locked because I don't know how to let her go." The honesty in his voice startled her. "I'm not here to replace her," she said again. "I'm here to build something new if you'll let me." He nodded slowly, but the tension did not ease. Too much history lay between them, too many unspoken fears. That night, the boy woke crying. She rushed to him, holding him until the sobs faded. He clung to her, whispering that he was scared she would leave like his mother had, not by choice but by fate. "I'm still here," she told him, over and over. Outside the door, the cowboy listened, his heart torn between gratitude and fear. He had brought her here to give his son a chance at warmth again. Now he wondered if he had asked too much of them both. The land outside lay quiet, stars sharp overhead. The ranch stood steady, holding stories of loss and hope in equal measure. And somewhere between past and future, all three of them stood on uncertain ground, the promise of belonging trembling like a fragile thing, waiting to see if it would hold or break. The weeks that followed felt heavier, as if the land itself sensed the strain settling over the house. The woman kept busy from dawn until night, giving herself no room to sit too long with her thoughts. Work was easier than waiting. When her hands were moving, her mind stayed quiet. When they were not, doubts crept in like cold through thin walls. The cowboy grew quieter, too. He still spoke kindly, still thanked her for her help, but there was a distance now, careful and measured. She noticed how often he checked the fence line, how his gaze drifted toward the road leading into town. Something was coming, she could feel it, though she did not know what shape it would take. The boy felt it as well. He stayed close to her, more than before, following her from room to room, asking questions that carried more weight than a child's should. "You won't leave, right?" he asked one afternoon while they shelled beans together. She paused, choosing her words. "I'm still here," she said. "And I don't go easy once I decide to stay." He studied her face as if searching for cracks. Then he nodded, satisfied enough for now. Still, that night he slept with his door open, light spilling into the hall like a silent plea. In town, things had shifted. The whispers grew louder, less careful. One woman warned her gently to be cautious, said some folks did not like the way the ranch was changing. Another hinted that the cowboy's past held more trouble than she knew. She thanked them politely and kept her head high, but each word added to the weight she carried home. One afternoon, as she was returning from the well, she saw two riders stop at the edge of the property. They did not dismount. They simply sat there, watching. Her heart raced. She forced herself to keep walking, every step measured. When she reached the house, the cowboy was already on the porch, eyes narrowed. "They won't cause trouble today," he said quietly. "But they're testing boundaries." "Why?" she asked. "What do they want?" He hesitated. "Some folks think this land should belong to someone else. They think I'm standing in the way." She looked out at the wide fields, the fences they had mended together. "And bringing me here made it worse. It made it visible," he replied. "Change always does." That night she could not sleep. The wind rattled the windows, and every sound felt too sharp. She thought about the letter still folded away in her trunk, the option it offered. The escape. She did not open it. Instead, she rose and walked quietly down the hall. The locked room stood open again, just a little. She did not enter this time. She only stood there, listening to the silence beyond it, thinking of the woman in the photographs and the life that had once filled this house. She understood then that fear lived here too, not just hers. The next morning brought bad news. A notice arrived from town, delivered by a boy too young to understand its weight. It spoke of a dispute, of claims and meetings, of the need for proof and witnesses. The cowboy read it once, then folded it neatly, his face unreadable. "What does it mean?" she asked. "It means some folks want to push me," he said. "See if I'll bend?" "And will you?" He met her eyes. "I've been bending my whole life. I won't break for them." The tension spread like a storm building on the horizon. Days grew hotter, work grew harder. The boy stopped laughing as freely, watching his father with worry he tried to hide. One evening he asked a question that stopped her cold. "If they take the ranch, where will we go?" She had no answer ready. She glanced at the cowboy, who stood near the window, jaw tight. "They won't take it," she said, hoping her voice sounded steadier than she felt. But doubt crept in. She imagined leaving again, the boy's small hand slipping from hers. The thought hurt more than she expected. As the meeting in town drew closer, pressure mounted. Neighbors stopped by with advice, with warnings, with thinly veiled opinions. Some offered support, others thin smiles. She listened to it all, absorbing the way this land judged loyalty. One night, after the boy was asleep, she finally spoke what had been weighing on her. "If I'm making this harder for you," she said quietly, "I can go. I won't fight it." The cowboy turned to her, eyes dark. "You think this is about ease?" he asked. "You think sending you away would fix what they want?" "It might," she said. "They wouldn't have an excuse." He shook his head. "They'd find another. They always do." She stepped closer, heart pounding. "Then let me stand with you," she said, "not as a problem. As family." The word hung between them, fragile and powerful. He looked away, breathing slow. "Family takes more than good intentions," he said. "I know," she replied. "It takes choosing each other, even when it's hard." Before he could answer, a sound cut through the night. Hooves. Close. The boy appeared in the doorway, eyes wide. "Pa," he whispered. "Someone's out there." The cowboy moved fast, calm but alert. He stepped onto the porch, scanning the darkness. A rider emerged from the shadows, stopping short of the fence. "It's time," the man called. "Meeting's tomorrow." "Thought you should know." The rider did not wait for a reply. He turned and vanished back into the dark. Sleep did not come easily after that. Morning arrived heavy and tense. The cowboy dressed early, his movements deliberate. The boy watched him silently. The woman packed a small basket of food, hands trembling despite her resolve. In town, the meeting drew a crowd. Voices filled the room, rising and falling, arguments circling like hawks. The cowboy stood firm, speaking plainly, without flourish. She watched him, proud and afraid all at once. She noticed how often his gaze found the boy standing close to her side and how that steadied him. Accusations flew, claims were made, doubt crept into the air. At one point, all eyes turned to her. She felt her heart leap into her throat. "She's just passing through," someone said. "What does she know of this land?" She stepped forward before fear could stop her. "I know what it means to work for something," she said. "I know what it means to stay when leaving would be easier," the room murmured. The cowboy's eyes met hers, surprise and something like gratitude flickering there. The meeting dragged on, unresolved, tension thick. When it finally ended, nothing was settled. Only lines drawn deeper. On the ride home, the boy rode close, silent. The land stretched ahead, unchanged, indifferent to human struggle. As they reached the house, the sun dipped low, painting the sky with fire. That night, the boy spoke again, voice small but steady. "If they try to take our home," he said, "I'll fight." The cowboy knelt before him. "No," he said gently, "you'll stand." "That's stronger." The woman watched them, heart full and aching. She realized then that whatever came next would decide everything. Not just the ranch, but the shape of their lives? The wind picked up, carrying the scent of dust and rain. Somewhere in the dark, choices waited to be made. And as the house settled around them, she knew the moment was coming when staying would demand more courage than leaving ever had. The night after the meeting passed slow and restless. The house creaked in ways it never had before, or maybe they were just listening harder now. The cowboy sat at the table long after the lamp had been turned down, papers spread in front of him, hands folded as if holding himself steady. The woman moved quietly through the room, setting things in order that did not need setting, just to feel useful. The boy slept fitfully, calling out once before settling again. Each sound pulled at the woman's chest. She sat beside his bed until his breathing evened, brushing his hair back with a tenderness that surprised her. When she stood, she caught the cowboy watching from the doorway. "He'll be all right," she said softly. "I know," he replied. "I just wish he didn't have to be strong so young." They shared a look then, one that carried more than words could hold. Something between them eased, just a little, like a knot loosening after being pulled too tight. Morning came clear and bright, the sky wide and honest. The land looked the same as it always had, fences standing, grass bending in the breeze. It felt almost strange that something so steady could be threatened by words spoken in a crowded room. They worked that day as they always had. The cowboy rode the far fence line, checking posts and wire. The woman tended the house and the small garden, the boy close at her side. She showed him how to plant seeds properly, how to press the soil just enough. He listened carefully, asking serious questions, treating the task like something important. "Things grow better when you don't rush them," she told him. He nodded. "Pa says that too." By late afternoon, dust rose on the road. A wagon approached, slow and deliberate. The cowboy returned just as it stopped at the gate. A man stepped down, older than most, his face lined from years under the sun. He tipped his hat respectfully. "I wanted to talk," the man said. Without a crowd, the cowboy nodded and leaned against the fence. The woman stayed back, the boy's hand tight in hers, listening. "There's been talk," the man continued. "Claims and counterclaims. Folks stirring trouble because they think they can." "And what do you think?" the cowboy asked. "I think this land's been yours a long time," the man said. "Long enough to prove something." He reached into his coat and pulled out folded papers. "These might help, old records." Boundaries marked clear. The cowboy took them, surprise flickering across his face. "Why are you doing this?" Meaning was clear. The land was his. "It always had been. It's not over yet," he said. "But this changes things." She nodded, relief washing through her. "Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to speak." The boy climbed onto a chair, peering at the papers. "Does this mean we're safe?" The cowboy smiled, a real one this time. "It means we're closer?" Days passed, then weeks. The dispute did not vanish overnight, but the edge dulled. Meetings grew quieter. Accusations lost their fire. The town shifted, slowly, reluctantly, toward acceptance. The woman noticed the change in small ways. Fewer stares, more greetings. One afternoon, a neighbor stopped by with fresh bread, no questions asked. Another offered help mending a fence. The ranch began to feel less like a battleground and more like a home again. The boy laughed more, his shoulders lighter. He spoke of school, of friends, of plans that stretched beyond tomorrow. One night, as they watched the stars, he said something that made the woman's throat tighten. "I'm glad you came," he said simply. "So am I?" she replied, meaning it more deeply than she had ever meant anything. The cowboy changed too. The tension that had lived in him for so long eased. He slept better, he spoke more. Sometimes, late in the evening, he told stories of the land, of his own childhood, of mistakes and lessons learned the hard way. She listened, sharing pieces of her past in return. The distance between them shrank, replaced by a quiet understanding. It makes room. The final meeting came on a warm morning. This time the room held less anger and more resolve. The papers were presented, the lines drawn clear, the matter settled. When it was over, the cowboy stepped outside, the weight lifting from his shoulders. The woman stood beside him, the boy between them, his hand in both of theirs. "We did it," the boy said, grinning. "Yes," the cowboy replied. "We did." On the ride home, the land looked brighter, greener, as if sharing in their relief. The house welcomed them back with open doors and familiar creaks. That evening, they ate together on the porch, laughter carrying into the open air. As the sun dipped low, the woman stood and looked out across the fields. The path that had brought her here felt distant now, like a story she had once read. She thought of the moment on the platform, of the suitcase in her hand, of the fear she had carried. She thought of the words that had changed everything. "You can send me back," and the answer that had followed. The cowboy joined her, standing close. "I never said this plain," he said. "But I should have." She turned toward him, heart steady. "You don't owe me anything." "I do," he replied, "for staying." "For choosing us?" She took a breath. "I stayed because this feels like home," she said. "Not because I had nowhere else to go?" He nodded, emotion thick in his voice. "I'd like it to be more than just a place you stay." The boy, pretending not to listen, looked up with a knowing smile. "She already belongs here?" he said. The woman laughed softly, tears in her eyes. "You decided that a long time ago." Warm and steady. The land stretched wide before them, not as a challenge now, but as a promise. In the end, it was not ink or claims or the approval of others that decided her place. It was a child's choice, a man's courage, and her own willingness to stay when staying mattered most. And as the night settled around their home,